Alright, so what you're looking at right here is a little project that I like to call Screw It, Everyone's Getting Jenga for Christmas, which was inspired by a fellow woodworkers project called F It, Everybody's Getting Cutting Boards for Christmas. And I gotta admit, his cutting boards were way nicer than my Jenga, but whatever, I'm making it out of junk. Basically, tonight I'm trying to clean up my wood shop, and it's an absolute mess, and it's littered with all kinds of scraps from other projects I did over the winter. There are pieces of 2x4 and pieces of white pine and pieces of, well, this is actually a little piece of pallet. I think that's maple, of all things. There's Douglas fir. There's just all kinds of stuff. Most of it's not really big enough to be useful for any projects I'm working on in the near future, but I hate to throw anything out. So what I decided was I was going to try and make Jenga, or if the copyright gods out there don't like that, we'll call it block stack, whatever. I don't know. I don't freaking care. Anyway, so I looked up the dimensions for the Jenga pieces online, and what I found was it's not so much the exact dimensions that matter. It is basically the proportion between the length and the width of the pieces. You want the pieces to be 3 times longer than they are wide. And the official Jenga pieces, I guess, are 2.5 centimeters wide by 7.5 centimeters long, which makes it such that when you stack 3 pieces across each other, or 3 pieces next to each other, they equal the length of the pieces below them. So anyway, that's what I'm going to show you how to do here, but you can multiply those proportions or you can use inches. It doesn't matter. You can make these actually out of full width 2x4s and make a huge outdoor set. That's fun too. But I'm going to stick with the dimensions that I found online. We're going to make pieces that are, let me grab one. We're going to make pieces that are 7.5 centimeters long. Yeah, there we go. Alright, can you see that? Probably not. 7.5 centimeters long by 2.5 centimeters wide by 1.5 centimeters thick. So basically all you really need to do this, I think it goes a lot faster on a table saw. I'm certain you could do all of this on your bandsaw, but I'm not going to. I'm going to go ahead and use my table saw. Let me just move some stuff out of the way momentarily. There's basically just a couple of cuts that we have to do here. First, we need to rip the pieces to 2.5 centimeters wide. Then we need to thickness the pieces to 1.5 centimeters thick. And last but not least, we need to cut them to 7.5 centimeters long. And if you want the extra nice little finish step, of course, you can put the round over on it like I did. Haven't decided whether I'm doing that to all my pieces yet or not. My router setup isn't the best. But anyway, we are going to go ahead and set this up to rip all of the pieces to 2.5 centimeters. Now what I'm going to do is measure off my tape measure. And get this as close to 2.5 centimeters as I can. Don't know if you can see that, but that's pretty spot on. Now, after you cut a couple of pieces, I've heard some woodworkers say that accuracy actually diminishes the more you have to measure, and I have become a big believer in that. So what I do is I take one of my finished pieces later, if I want to make another set or something. I take a finished piece, and I'll slip that right up next to my blade, and work it in against the teeth as close as possible. And what I'm going to do is check for any gap using these, what do you call it, a finger measuring thing. I'll come up with a word for that later. But anyway, I'm going to find the one here that's about, let's see, we've got a 2/1000 of an inch. We'll try that. We'll see how much gap we've got there. We've got a little bit more than that. That's incredibly close if that wouldn't fit. But I want to get it as close as I possibly can. Okay, the 2/1000 doesn't fit, so I'm going to ease up on it a little bit. Let's see here. Not quite. Yeah, that's pretty darn good. Okay, so now I have this set up. And again, for your first ones, just measure off to 2.5 centimeters. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to take some of my scrap wood here, and of course my scrap is pretty small, so I want to make sure I've got a good hold on it while I'm cutting. I should actually have a zero clearance insert plate in here so I don't get hung up on anything. I don't have one handy, so I'm going to use my regular plate. But again, if you have a zero clearance plate, I highly recommend using it. Otherwise, your cutoffs might fall down here at the blade and get hung up. So, all right, here we go. Alright, so in the meantime, I forgot to take down my Jenga set off the side table, and it all fell down. Pardon me. Alright, so next up, we need to take our pieces that are now all cut to the same width as our other piece here, and we need to thickness these, and we can do this on the table saw too, that's not a problem. What we're going to do is kind of the same deal. We're going to set our fence up, so let's just get these off to the side quick. And now I know the YouTube safety police are going to come along and tell me all the terrible things that I did with my table saw. And I don't disagree. I don't have a riving knife. I had pieces stuck here along the blade. Could have very easily kicked back at me. I know. I don't have a good setup. I wish I could do better, but right now I don't have the cash. So anyway, we're going to set the blade up to thickness these pieces to 1.5 centimeters. And again, since I have a finished piece, I'm going to take that, I'm going to use that to measure off. And once my fence is locked in, I'm going to use my finger gauge. See, I told you I remember. And I'm going to use my finger gauge to make sure the blade is reasonably close. Now, this piece doesn't feel like it's hung up on the teeth, but my 5/1000th of an inch finger gauge does not fit between it. Let's try an even smaller one. We can go with the .002 or the .001. Yeah, that's more like it. That fits 1/1000th of an inch. That's like nothing. So, all right, I'm pretty satisfied with that. So let's go. If I had a zero clearance insert plate, that wouldn't have happened, and honestly, this entire thing would be a lot safer. I will install one on here very shortly, I promise. So, now what I've got here, I don't know what you can see here, to be honest, because I can't see the other side of my iPad, but what I've got here is a bunch of pieces that are all the same thickness and all the same width as my original piece here. They are 1.5 inches thick, or an inch and a half, or gee whiz, 1.5 centimeters, 1.5 centimeters thick by 2.5 centimeters wide. And now what I need to do is I need to get them all to 7.5 centimeters long. While I'm thinking about it, one other thing that I read online is that it is a good idea for your pieces not all to be the same, exactly the same thickness and exactly the same weight. There is a little bit of difference between pieces in Jenga. So one thing that I like about using my junk to do this is basically that I've got all kinds of different things out here in my shop. There's a couple of little pieces here that were actually pallet wood. I think they're maple. I can't tell for sure. But the rest of this is just white pine, and there's some Douglas fir in here somewhere as well. So they're going to be slightly different weights, which will be good to have some variety in the game, I guess. But anyway, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go over here to my miter saw. And again, this is all stuff that you could do on the table saw if that's the only setup you've got. I mean, really, if you wanted to get technical about all this stuff, you could probably just do it with hand tools, but that would take you for freaking ever. So, I'm going to take my previous setup off my miter saw. And what I want to do is set up a fence so I can get quick uniform cuts on this thing. What I'm going to do is get my tape measure, get my pieces that I'm going to cut here. Alright. And I can measure 7.5 centimeters. And what I want to do is basically just clamp a block to my saw at 7.5 centimeters. Now, fortunately for me, I don't have to measure and do all that again. I've already got a piece cut that's 7.5 centimeters, so I'll just use that as a spacer, put my block against it, and clamp. Well, come on, clamp. I need more quick clamps. If anybody wants to send me some, I'd be your best friend forever. Alright, so I've got my stopper block set up here. Awesome. What we're going to do is just butter pieces up against that stopper block and cut. Now, if you've got longer pieces that you cut, this whole process goes really fast because you can just cut it, push it towards the stopper block, cut it, etc., etc. But I've got a lot of small pieces here, so it's going to go a little bit slower. Also, if anybody wants to donate like a dust collection system to yours truly, that'd be awesome too. I do have a new shop vac coming next month. Alright, so now I've got a ton of equally sized little friggin' blocks. Pretty awesome. So now, the last step that we're going to do with these is go over here to the router table. And again, this is kind of an optional step, or it's a step you could just do with a hand sander if that's all you've got. But I'm going to round over the edges on all these little blocks. Now, once again, my router setup here isn't very good. I need to get an actual plate to put in this table. This is a really half-assed solution I've got right here, and frankly, the hole that I've got in the table is almost unsafe for this operation. But I'm going to do it because I'm excited to show you this whole process. So here we go. I've got my smallest round over bit that I've got already set up here. It's just going to give me a nice rounded corner on all of these edges. Now, I'm not going to go through and do all of these. I'm just going to show it to you real quick. Alright, so here is one finished block. However, I've got another, what, about 10 there on the table. Really the nice thing about this is, yeah, the setup takes just a little bit of time, but once you've got everything set up, you can make a lot of these pieces very, very, very fast. So, you know, really you can probably knock out a game of Jenga in about a half an hour, 45 minutes maybe, and that's including this round over. Again, if I had this table set up just a little bit better, than I felt more comfortable with the round over bit, I could do that a lot faster as well. But given that situation right there with that massive hole, I don't want the pieces to drop in. I don't want my fingers to go low and hit that blade. Just fingers in contact with the router blade is going to be a bad day, and I don't want that. So anyway, take caution with all the stuff that I pointed out that's wrong with my setup. But I completely encourage you to make your own sets of these games. You can make a bunch for Christmas. I only know so many people who are going to want to play Jenga, so I may end up like donating some to like Geisinger Children's Hospital or something like that. I have no idea. But all right, well, if you have any fun uses of your scrap wood that you'd like to share with me, go ahead and give me a comment.